We did it, honey, our new home.
I can't believe it. It's finally ours.
Let's go see inside.
The house looked perfect the day we signed the papers. Tree-lined street, quiet sidewalks, freshly painted mailboxes. The realtor called it one of the most stable communities in the county. The HOA rules were clear in the small binder we received before closing. Lawn height limits, parking guidelines, trash pickup times. Everything seemed fair. Closing went smoothly. Keys were handed over. Our first night felt peaceful. 3 days later, a letter appeared in our mailbox. Official HOA stationery, signed by Karen, the president. It claimed our driveway did not meet updated community surface appearance standards. We read it 3 times. Updated? The driveway was identical to how we had toured it, no changes. The rulebook had nothing about driveway appearance standards. At the next HOA meeting, Karen arrived with a thick binder and spoke confidently. She casually mentioned new aesthetic enforcement guidelines to preserve property value. When asked when the changes were approved, she only said the board had authority to clarify rules. No dates, no votes. Just a quiet statement meant to end further questions. The following week, another letter arrived, this time about our backyard fence color, allegedly stating updated uniformity requirements. The fence had existed long before we moved in and passed inspection at closing, yet fines were threatened if we didn't comply. That's when it became clear. The rules we carefully reviewed before buying were no longer the rules being enforced. The goalposts had shifted, and the changes appeared only after our purchase. At first, we thought the letters were just bad timing. HOA rules could be strict, and maybe we had overlooked something small. So we fixed the driveway and adjusted the garden lights exactly the way the notice suggested. It cost a little money, but we figured once everything matched Karen's standards, the problem would disappear. It didn't. A week later, another violation letter arrived. This time it wasn't the driveway or the lights. According to Karen, our trash bin had been visible from the street longer than the permitted hours. The fine was slightly higher than the previous one, and the letter included a warning about continued non-compliance. That was strange. We had taken the trash out the same way every neighbor on the street did. In fact, 2 houses next to us still had their bins sitting outside when I read the letter. Neither of them received a notice. Soon Karen's car started appearing on our street almost every morning. A slow drive past the houses, a clipboard resting on the passenger seat. Sometimes she stopped in front of our driveway and took photos with her phone. 2 days later, another violation arrived. This one claimed our lawn edging wasn't consistent with neighborhood symmetry. By that point, we had received 4 notices in a single month. The pattern was starting to feel personal. When I mentioned it to a neighbor during an evening walk, they gave a nervous laugh and said something that stuck with me. Karen always starts with one house. By the
Perfect
second month,
evening
the
for a
violations
walk.
were no longer surprising.
Absolutely. The dogs
They
are
were
loving
expected.
it. Yeah, they really
Every
are.
few days, another letter appeared in the mailbox. Sometimes it was about the driveway, sometimes the lawn edging. Once it was about a planter near the porch that Karen claimed didn't match community symmetry guidelines. The phrase didn't even exist in the rulebook. That's when we started paying closer attention. Karen's car appeared on our street almost every morning. She drove slowly past the houses, sometimes stopping long enough to take photos with her phone. The same pattern repeated again and again. Inspection. Photo. Letter. Fine. One evening during a walk, a neighbor stopped me and quietly asked if we had been receiving notices lately. When I said yes, they sighed and told me something that made the situation even stranger. We went through the same thing last year. Apparently, Karen had done this before. Another house had been cited repeatedly for minor issues after the owner questioned an HOA budget increase. Eventually, they sold the house and moved away. Once that story spread, more neighbors started sharing their experiences. The pattern was always the same. Someone asked a question at a meeting. A few days later, Karen began inspecting their property, and the violation letters followed. By the time the next HOA meeting was announced, several residents had started collecting their letters and comparing dates. The pattern wasn't just suspicious anymore. It was obvious. Karen thought the fines would keep people quiet, but instead the entire neighborhood was starting to compare notes. By the time the next HOA meeting arrived, the room looked different. Normally only a few homeowners attended, but that night almost every chair in the clubhouse was filled. Some people stood along the walls, holding folders and printed violation letters. The quiet tension in the room was obvious. Karen walked in with the same confidence she always had, her binder tucked under one arm and a clipboard in her hand. She clearly expected another routine meeting where she would move through the agenda quickly, but the meeting didn't go the way she expected. When the floor opened for questions, one homeowner stood up and placed several violation letters on the table in front of the board. Another resident followed with printed photos showing houses with the exact same violations that had never received notices. Then someone projected a timeline onto the wall. Every homeowner who had questioned Karen during meetings had later received multiple violation notices. Meanwhile, several houses with the same issues had never been cited at all. The room fell silent. A board member slowly flipped through the documents while another compared them to the official HOA rulebook. When they asked Karen to explain the difference in enforcement, her confident tone disappeared. By the end of the meeting, the board voted to suspend her authority until a full review of enforcement practices was completed. Karen didn't argue, because the strategy she thought would make people quiet had done the opposite. It brought the entire neighborhood together. Now we want to hear from you. Have you ever dealt with an HOA leader who targeted homeowners unfairly? Share your experience in the comments, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and share so more people can learn how to stand up to unfair systems.